Hi, I'm Rebecca Fredericks and welcome to RebeccaFredericksTV, the place to be for your personal and professional success. Well, it's Thursday tip time and today I'm going to be talking to you about intuition and how to know when to use it. Now, intuition is one of those very intangible concepts for most of us. It's hard to define exactly what it is, and because no one really knows what it is, we write it off as something that's not really there or a myth or just pretend. And if we do believe in intuition and we get that gut feeling about things, many of us either ignore, mistrust, or drown out these feelings with rationalizations. So let's first look at what intuition actually is and then determine those times in our lives when we actually should listen out for it and trust it above everything else. Now, intuition is feeling-based. You feel something about something. It is what some people call our gut instinct. And most of us have been taught that intuition is irrational and untrustworthy because we don't know where these insights, these feelings are coming from. It's hard to rationalize feelings, and so most of us feel very uncomfortable making a decision based on our gut instincts or intuition alone. Have you ever had a time when you felt something in your gut, but talked your way out of it and made a different or even the opposite decision to the one your gut was telling you to make? I remember a time when I was in my early 20s and waitressing at a restaurant. A new man joined the team and I took an immediate dislike to him. I mean, I really didn't like him. There was something about him I just didn't trust. But I couldn't put my finger on what it was, and I told myself to stop being so silly and to stop making snap negative judgments about people. So I actively worked to make friends with this guy, and when about a month in, he asked to borrow some money from me, I said yes. Now, I'm sure you can guess what happened, but I naively handed over £200 of my hard-earned cash, and he, of course, promised to pay me back. Now, when I got into work a few days later, he had resigned and I never saw him again. And when I think back now, my intuition was telling me not to trust this man, but I went against what my intuition was telling me because the logical part of my brain worked through the reasons for this gut feeling and told me I was wrong. Now, I have a real problem trusting my intuition, and it's definitely something that I'm trying to work on. Listening to my gut makes me feel somehow out of control or like I'm being irrational. But let's have a look at why this really isn't the case at all. Now, there are two main parts of the brain activated in decision-making. One part, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, is activated in what we think of as the rational, conscious decision-making. And the decisions that are made more on our gut instincts and intuition depend more on the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So there are two separate parts of the brain involved in decision-making. One part of the brain is associated with the conscious and rational decision-making we've all been taught is right, proper, and trustworthy. And the other part is less conscious, but no less trustworthy or rational. And here's why. Both parts of the brain receive the exact same information from the outside world. So if both parts of the brain receive exactly the same sensory information from the outside world, why are so many of us uncomfortable with trusting our intuition or gut instincts? Well, neuroscientists believe this is because the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for our gut instincts, works so much faster than the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for our more conscious decision-making. And the reason that the ventromedial prefrontal cortex works so quickly is its position closer to the brain stem. But just because this part of the brain works so quickly doesn't make it less reliable. In fact, this part of the brain receives more information because it works more broadly. What this means is that this part of the brain is also connected to every visceral part of the body, and so receives information from the body as well as the information from the world outside. Therefore, even though many of us think that our intuition is a myth, or it's irrational, or it's untrustworthy, it is actually receiving the same sensory information as the part of the brain that we believe in, trust, and think to be rational. This means that our intuition is no more or less reliable than our logical decision-making. What's more, because the ventromedial prefrontal cortex works so quickly and receives information from the body as well as from the outside world, some may argue that it is better to use this part of the brain when making certain types of decisions. This means that it might be better to use our intuition in certain circumstances. With this being the case, let's look at when it might be a good idea to trust and use our intuition. I've put all of this information into a strategy for you called the When to Use Your Intuition strategy. 1. When you need to stop procrastinating. So if you are a big procrastinator and find it really difficult to just do, use your intuition more. Trust your feelings, stop analyzing, and just go with your gut instinct. 2. When you need to see the big picture. The gut is big picture and doesn't focus on the little details. So when you're needing a big picture decision, use your intuition. But if the decision requires lots of detail, you want to engage and trust what the more logical part of your brain is telling you. 3. When the decision requires emotion. If the decision requires a level of emotional engagement, use your intuition. Some things just aren't black and white, and facts can only tell us so much. There will be times when you need to make a call, when there is no right or wrong, but only how you feel about something. It is at these times when you should trust your gut. 4. Don't use your intuition when there's risk involved. If there's a level of risk involved in the decision, you need to make sure you use your logical thinking. Your gut loves risk and will often tell you to just go for it and to hell with the consequences. Most of the time, both parts of our brain are aligned and we make a congruent decision about the best thing to do. But when we are having trouble and feel torn, consciously decide which part of you is right for the decision and go with your logical or gut-driven instinctive brain. So now I want to get into today's exercise, and I want you to start by honestly asking yourself whether you are more of a logical thinker or an intuitive thinker. I'm sure you know which you are, but if you're not sure, look back to the last big decision that you made. I don't mean getting up this morning, but it could be anything from why you decided to buy that pair of shoes to why you decided that it was time to leave your job. Why did you make that decision? Was it because you felt it was right? Or did you make a mental list of all the pros and cons and logically work through it? Now, once you've decided which camp you fall into, I want you to make a list of all the decisions that you have coming up and need to make. Have at least 3 decisions in mind and make sure some of these decisions are big, important ones, as well as the little irrelevant decisions. And I want you to decide which part of your brain you should listen to when making this decision. So instead of just relying on what you always do, I want you to consciously decide which part of you it makes sense to listen to and write down beside the decision which part of your brain you're going to trust and go with when the time comes. Use the when to use your intuition strategy that I just went through, and then when the time comes to make the decision, I want you to consciously decide to listen to and trust the part of your brain that you have written down. Now, some people are just more tuned into their intuition than others, and there is a biological reason for this. Those who are more tuned into their intuition have more activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, so the part of the brain responsible for these gut reactions or instinctive thoughts. However, the brain works like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So if you are wanting to develop your relationship with your intuition, you need to increase the activity of the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And the way to do this is to use it more. Trust and listen to your intuition. The more you do this, the easier it will become. Now, if you want the PDF blueprint for this exercise and the strategy, as well as the other course materials from today's episode, then please head over to the subscriptions part of the site and see which subscription option is the best fit for you. So that's what I've got for you today. If you've liked this, then please like it below and share it with your friends. And I want to hear from you. Are you intuitive? Do you engage with your intuition? Do you trust it, or do you try and logically think every decision through before making it? I would love to hear from you. Your Thursday tip tweetable is, learn to trust your gut. It might just be the best decision you've ever made. As always, remember that you are in control of your own life. If you want something to happen, you have to go out there and make the changes. That's not to say that others can't help you and support you. That's why I'm here, and that's what your friends and family are for. But you have all the power that you will ever need inside yourself. So use it and create a life and a future that you love. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next week.